Okay, hold tight for 1 minute. Be right with you. All right. I want to welcome everyone. Greetings and the best of salutations. There will be prayer, power, peace, prosperity, and patience. Welcome on behalf of the UB Blake Blake National Jazz Institute Culture Center and Common Humanity to the event Launching Forward in the Midst of a Pandemic, Breaking Barriers while Moving Toward Healing. This is the day that we gather and come together and constructing, better yet, reconstructing value. Doing so, we are promoting the value of self-worth for our common humanity, communicating with precision a clearer image to the world. Also, the mandate is to cultivate the potential of knowledge that is in us all as we become practitioners of social maturity by concluding that resiliency is the author of success. We are tapping into and releasing and realigning ourselves with the value of that resiliency, with understanding, knowing that when you have balance, understanding speaks clearly, which will result in restoring social credibility. We are tapping into and realigning ourselves with resiliency, with tolerance, knowing that the importance of capacity training. Also, we are tapping into and realigning ourselves and with resiliency of temperance and temperament. As a result, we're revising social coherency. We are and will be tapping into and releasing and realigning ourselves with the value of that resiliency with confidence. As a result, we will be replenishing social continuity. And finally, we're tapping into and realigning ourselves and releasing with the value of that resiliency with respect. As a result, we'll be reclaiming social solidarity. And when we reclaim social solidarity, we know that anything that will come up against you will proceed coming up against you with caution. Today's presenter is Paul Thompson. He will talk about the spiritual laws that govern our lives. And remember, one thing about principle is that principle do not react to anything. Other than that, Paul Thompson, glad to have you. Do your thing.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the honor of being here and being a part of the healing vibration of moving towards a more perfect energy to march towards bringing people together. And so I want to talk on the topic this evening on the law on manifestation and the law on abundance, because the law on manifestation and abundance is something that we are interacting with every day. And we probably oftentimes are not realizing the tremendous resource and the tremendous power that is with us in the journey of life. And me, myself, just a little background. when I was 4 years old, my older sister, who was 5, pushed me in Meridian Hill Park, which was the pool, which is called Malcolm X Park today. And I was under the water when the babysitter came looking for me. And my sister didn't tell her I was under the water, but she panicked. And eventually, some of the guys came across the pond and pulled me out of the water. And all I remember as a 4-year-old is me being over top of the pond, over top of the water area, observing everything and hearing everything that went on. And so that was very puzzling for me as a 4-year-old because, I was supposed to be in the water drowning, according to what people told me based on the physical laws. And so I think that is one of the experiences for me that really started my journey in the unseen world, really wanting to know and understand the unseen world. Shortly after that experience, my mother took us to Mexico, 1965, and I experienced poverty like I had never seen in the United States. People eating garbage off of plates and people walking around with no shoes on their feet. And so I'd never seen it. So I was kind of devastated by the experience because it was something I had never seen, never experienced. And so I'm quite sure people born in 2000, 1990s, they probably can verify and bear witness to homelessness and seeing people in this condition. But in the 60s, this did not exist in the United States. And so those two experiences, I really give a lot of tribute to shaping me as a young person to go on a journey wanting to really understand this thing called life. So I recall at 8 years old, looking at my parents and saying, this is mom and daddy, but who are you? Who are you really other than mom and daddy? And so I started to really become a student of what I would call the spiritual world, the unseen world, and interact with people and wanting to understand people at a more mature level. And it led me to looking at and watching and observing the homeless, the mentally ill, the prostitute. I really wanted to begin to understand what made people different by gender, by class, by education. And what was so fascinating to me, the more I looked into this realm, I didn't really find much difference in people. I found very, very consistency of human behavior. And it led me to some real interesting ideas moving forward. And so I became very, very serious as a young person because eventually I came to understand that there were unseen forces interacting with people with man control that was not what one may call not fair. Just not being fair. And it really upset me because I didn't understand why humanity, from a humanity standpoint, why this was being done. And so I began to do a lot of research and became very observant to look under each rock that I picked up to see what was underneath of it, so to speak. And I would find so much contradiction to what was being told, what was being given to people as education. I would find things different than what was being told. Or I would go to an event where the media was present, and I would be at the event and I would watch the media say what happened at the event. And I'm saying that didn't happen. I was there. And so it was that type of dynamic. So getting into my topic for this evening, the law on manifestation and the law on abundance. When we talk about the law on manifestation, we're talking about the power of creation. And because these two are very present in our lives every day, it is amazing to watch how people are not necessarily aware of the tremendous resource, the tremendous power that lives within us. So when we talk about manifestation, we're talking about every time that we have a thought, an idea, that we acknowledge, access, we create, and we have the potential and the possibility of manifest. And so one level of manifest is energy through making ourselves an offer and accepting the offer to create what we call spiritually a contract. When we do this, we have set in motion the ability to act upon the idea with emotion, with feeling, with fervor, with passion, to bring into physical manifestation our goals, our dreams, our ideas. And so when we look at some of the multi-billionaires on planet Earth, I like saying that what separates them from pretty much everybody else is they have a dream. They have an idea that they stayed with and would not let go. And so take Walt Disney, for example, where he created Disney World, he created Disneyland, and in his inception of it, because he manifests Disneyland in his mind, he died before the physical construct came into manifestation. And so in one of the meetings, it was reported that a gentleman stood up and says, it's a shame that Walt Disney died and never got a chance to see Disneyland. And another gentleman stood up and said, what do you mean he never got a chance to see it? Of course he saw it, he created it. And I thought that was so profound because it is saying that there is two stages of manifest. It is first to manifest in our spirit that basically brings the idea into fruition. Then the physicality has to take place based on the applying of the physical laws that manifested into the physical realm. And so for me, as a very young person, I began to really understand that the whole idea of the resource that lives in us in terms of the manifesting of something on a physical plane is secondary to the spiritual manifestation in the mental, in the spirit. And therefore, then it's carried out into the physical world. And so when we miss the understanding of that law, that manifest law, that creation law, that when it's manifested on a physical plane, there are already people ahead because they are in the inception of it when it's being manifest from the idea, from the thought to the idea, connected to the emotion, being packaged to prepare for launch, for manifestation on the physical plane. And so what I wanted to talk about for a little bit this evening is how resourceful we are as humanity, how resourceful we are as a people, and the potential that lives in us to create, manifest, and the law of abundance, which is understanding our talents, gifts, and abilities. And so what we call the abundance, the law of abundance, and I'm going to come back to manifest, talk a little bit about the law of abundance. When we talk about the law of abundance, we're talking about that everybody's born with talents, gifts, and abilities that are dormant. And we have to tap into those resources. And as we tap into those resources, those talents, those gifts, and those abilities, we manifest those talents, gifts, and abilities first from the spirit into the potential. Then we have to apply the physical law in order to create the physical manifestation. or like somebody who's a musician or who can sing, or somebody can play the piano or the guitar. And so the potential is in the energy, the musical energy, and then it plays into a certain level of manifestation internal, and then it becomes projected external. And so for me, I see the whole entire universe in this manner based on I've come here to deal with spiritual things, understand spiritual things as a student of spiritual law. So my life is a reflection of understanding the spirit world. And so when I look at myself, and this is how I see everybody, I look at myself as a student and as a subject of understanding the law of cause and effect, the law of attraction, the law of reason for being, the law of clear expression, the law of unity, the law of labor, and all of these laws. And I watch how I interact with these laws and understand the obedience to these laws. And if I am obedient to these laws, how these laws respond back. And when I'm disobedient to the law, how the laws respond. And so over years of doing this, I've just written about the experience over and over again, or for many, many years, watching the law of attraction, watching the law of cause and effect, watching the law of labor. And it's really fascinating because the laws never change. They're constant. They do what they do. So when we're not conscious of them, if we're not paying attention to the law, then the law does what it does, and we become disappointed. We become frustrated. We become filled with anxiety, but we're still manifesting. We're still operating from these laws because they're here to stay. They're never going to change. So we're in this fast-paced world dealing with technology. Even though the technology is here and the technology is constantly changing the physical image, the laws that govern, that create all the foundation for all human behavior, all things that are under the subjection of law, those things must stay constant. And so I believe that the more that we are grounding ourselves in that understanding, the more that we spend the time to study the universal process, understanding the governing system or the governing law that is governed by a universal process, it helps us to come out of our emotion. It helps us to come out of anxiety, stress, frustration, disappointment, and mature to understand the resource that lives in us, that gives us a direct understanding of the resourcefulness that we have in manifestation and abundance. And so I want to open up and have a dialogue with everybody that comes on when I finish laying this foundation, because I really love to have a dialogue of on this subject. The more I looked into abundance as a child, as a student of law, I was really fascinated by what we call abundance in terms of plentifulness, abundance as we call infinite supply, abundance. It's the source. And what it helped me to understand as I got deeper and deeper into the observation is that if you are not acknowledging your resources, your abundance, because of the world system, it programs all of us to feel inferior to and less than. The spirit of lack has become what I would call a default switch. When we don't acknowledge our divinity, when we don't acknowledge our abundance, our talents, gifts, and abilities, by default, we take on what is called the spirit of lack. The spirit of lack is an idea. Once we take it on, because we're not acknowledging the resourcefulness that lives in us, we can spend our entire lifetime looking at things, experiencing things with the concept of lack, which means is we're not looking at the abundance, which is forever present. We start looking at the lack because the energy vibration is filling up the subconscious mind through program. Once we take on that spirit of lack, we start seeing lack in ourselves, seeing lack in society, something's missing. So I've had so many conversations with people for years, and they would say, well, there's something missing. And I'm trying to figure out, well, what's missing? Because everything that we need is present, it's forever present. And it is an idea that something is missing. And once the idea is something is missing, then that's a journey. That can be a lifetime, a whole journey of just trying to find something that doesn't exist. A great example of it is, I always use talking to young women. A woman saying, I'm looking for love. And I'm like, well, where are you looking? Well, I'm trying to find a man of my dreams. I'm trying to find a man to love me. And I would say, well, don't you have love? Isn't love inside of you? If you manifest your love and he manifests his love, then you all can share love. And this came to me so clearly one day because my mother, who was a foreign language teacher, what I realized is she spoke 4 languages. And I could not take her language from her and put it in me and then speak Spanish or speak French or speak Portuguese. I had to acquire it on my own. So I looked at love in that same manner. If my mother doesn't have love to give me, she couldn't give it to me, just like she cannot give me her Spanish or her French or her Portuguese, is because it's something she's acquired through her development. And so I began to see in the spirit world the same resource and power that lives in all of us. It is our ability to tap into the abundance, to acknowledge, the access, and apply the talents, gifts, and abilities from within that manifests exactly what we're looking for without. And so I would say to young people, love yourself unconditionally without judgment. And therefore you will attract love because you have love in you. But when the love isn't present, what often becomes a quiet desperation for looking for somebody to accept us, to validate us because of not doing it for ourselves. And so for me, that was a spiritual awakening, that it helped me to understand that the resource of love that comes from the creator of the universe, the Almighty, has given each and every one of us the potential to manifest love. As opposed to looking for someone to love us, the love is Elohim. It is already present. It is a matter of me now taking my love and sharing it with somebody who is open to receive it. Just as language, just as cookies and milk, just as any physical element, that you can't give anybody something that you do not have. And so just as it is in the physical realm, it is no different in the spirit realm. And so when we look at that, the concept that we talk about around lack, what I see is over years and years and years of conditioning and programming that millions and millions upon millions of people of the earth, millions and millions of people in the United States, we have bought into the idea of lack because it is much easier to keep people subdued, inferior, enslaved by them buying into lack, as opposed to them really discovering their abundance. And so when people discover their abundance, they hold on to their dreams. When people discover their abundance, they manifest great things and they don't have fear because they realize fear is only something that's created. There's 2 levels of fear again. There's fear that you can see, there's fear that you can't see. And so there's a reverence of fear that's natural, fearing the divine, the creator. But man's creating fear the boogeyman, fear this, fear that. That type of fear that's stored in humanity is about control. And so when we talk about the power of manifest, when we talk about understanding spirits, the spiritual world, that everything is attached to a spirit. And so the more that we learn about the spiritual world and understand the spiritual world is the foundation of everything in the physical world. So when we look at the physical world, nothing exists in the physical world before spirit, because the universe is made up of 3 things: energy, elements, and matter. But matter is dead. Matter has no life form by itself. So anything in matter form, like our flesh, it doesn't have life until it has an energy source. So when we really get into the energy source, it brings all things into life. It manifests all potential. And so I think this is the deception that we live under, is that we put all our focus, energy, and by program into carnality, into matter. And all the resource and power is in spirit, is in energy. And so when we start grounding ourselves in that, grounding ourselves in the understanding of self-knowledge as it relates to energy, law, principle, we rise up, we awaken, and we begin to manifest things at a whole different level. And so this has been a journey for me in terms of my humanitarian spirit, really wanting to create products, write, inspire humanity to tap into their gifts, talents, and abilities, and help people to rise up to their full potential. And so I looked how many of us have gone through an environment, oftentimes with our parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles, go to school, get a good education so you can get a good job, you know. And so we hear that, and that becomes like a program. Go to school, get a good education, you can get a good job. And the more that I evaluated the idea of getting a good education to get a good job, I looked at the people who were running planet Earth. I was looking at the billionaires and the multimillionaires, and you do the research and you find about 74% of them didn't go to school and get a good education to get a good job, but yet they were controlling hundreds of millions and potentially billions of dollars. And so something to me was wrong with that formula. It seemed like it was great for people who became very highly educated to teach, to represent, but in terms of time freedom, in terms of having your freedom given to you or earned, if you will, the formula of going to school, getting a good education, and get a good job, to me, there was something lacking, which again put me on a journey to study resourcefully the economic system and understand it at a more mature level. So when we talk about manifest, the power of manifest, and then we talk about the law of abundance, and we look at these two, we are interacting with both every day, because every day we are energy source. And because we all come to this plane called Earth as energy sources, we are manifesting every day ideas, thoughts. Sometimes we manifest the thought, but we don't carry it into the idea phase. But it is the idea phase where we contract with some emotion, and we make ourselves an offer, and we accept that offer. We take the idea to a different place, and we begin to develop it. So we're excited about the manifestation of that feeling, that idea, that possibility. And so really just watching for many, many years in relationships, in our relationship to resource, our relationship to knowledge, our relationship to grow, to mature, to understand, to manifest, to create. All of those things are relative to spirit, to spiritual law. And so in concluding my presentation, what I have concluded that is so important to bring out to the world is when we look at these physical bodies, you know, and we understand, you know, a lot of times we're trying to make sure glasses are straight, hair's combed, looking good, you know, and all those wonderful things, people looking real sharp. It is, these physical bodies are expressions. They house the energy. So the energy in us is who we really are. How can we demonstrate that? Well, biblically, whether it's the Bible, whether it's the Quran, whether it's the Talmud, the Injil, the Good News, it pretty much doesn't matter what book you pull up. If you use the book as a resource, a holy book, it talks about a God, the creator, that is interested in the heart, the mind, and the soul. The heart, mind, and the soul of man, humanity. And so when we think about that, what is in our heart is our desire. The things that we become most desirous of, most passionate for, is what's in the heart. The brain computer, which I call the billionaire brain computer, is where we manifest all ideas, where we create all ideas. And so nothing comes into existence without thought. So thought vibration is the first stage of acknowledgement of the possibility. And then the soul, which is the area that purpose formulates, which I look at in terms of my relationship to my higher self and the divine creator. Purpose is given to us through the soul. So when we look at the heart, the mind, and the soul, none of these entities are physical. Even though the heart is physical, the desire isn't. Even though the brain is physical, the mind and the spirit that contains the energy vibration is not physically seen. And then the soul. And so the greater aspects of us, the heart, mind, and soul that we communicate on higher frequency cannot be physically seen. And so that represents who we really are. The heart, the mind, and the soul is the passion in us for whatever we are feeling, the fight in us, the anger in us, whatever it is that we've created in those areas. It is unseen until we manifest it on a physical level through this. And so that, was fascinating to me in my study to understand that these physical bodies are finite, but the energy resource in us is infinite. It is unlimited. Nobody can stop your thinking. Nobody can stop your consciousness. So you can continue to vibrate energy at different frequencies, and you can continue to rise your vibration higher and higher. I don't think there's anybody I've ever talked to on planet Earth says, I reached my highest thought process. I can't go any higher. So the potential is unlimited. It's there for us to travel through many, many zones of manifestation. The question comes more so, are we ready? Are we willing? And do we have the desire to want to know? And so that is how I want to leave the presentation, and more so want to open it up for questions and comments and dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. The floor is open. Are there any
Good
questions?
evening, Michelle. Good evening, Rhonda. Good evening. Is that trying to recognize that number? Penny. And 843, that is Eddie. So anybody have any comments, questions, want to express themselves on the subject? Feel free.
Yeah, greetings, family. How you doing, Paul? This is Eddie.
Hey,
Can you hear
Eddie.
me? Can I be heard?
Yes, sir. You go right ahead.
Yeah, we've had some of the same experiences, just like what you're saying. You see a situation and you know that, just like it says in that book, kingdom of heaven is within. But this outside world kind of pulls and leans you a certain way, just like agreeing to be what some people say or get you to believe that you are. You're striving, you want to do better things, but
yes.
Well, I guess right now it's kind of hard for me to put it in words because you just spoke to so many things so accurately. I could really feel what you're saying, but I think that's two of the most challenging things. Once you acknowledge these things, staying focused on just that one premise, just like expanding love,
Mm-hmm.
you know, consideration, compassion, you know, self-respect. Um, you respect yourself, you can't disrespect anybody else. But overall, these things and what other people tend to go through, and then their behavior tends to kind of make you forget your main intent and your main objective, you know.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't exactly know how to put it in words, but go ahead, I yield.
Yeah. So if I asked you, Eddie, do you have a billionaire brain computer? How would you respond to that?
Yes, I do. I would respond yes.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Now, when we
Because
look at, go ahead.
no, but I was gonna say, because I acknowledge that all of us are the same. You know, we might have come here to do things differently or specific things, but overall, our physical makeup is all basically the same.
Yes.
So if somebody made $1 billion, you know, just like what I was saying, with that right focus and intent, it's attainable by anybody who desires that, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. You see, because when we talk about the manifestation, the good question for all of us is, what are we manifesting every day and why? If you are not acquiring your goals, if you're not acquiring your dream, what is it that you have in your billionaire brain computer that you are manifesting every day? Because the more that we understand that everything is subject to law, and if we apply the law and we follow the law, then it will create the manifestation of our goals and our dreams. So my question becomes to clear to people, starting with myself, what am I manifesting every day? And why am I manifesting what I'm manifesting if it's not my goals and dreams? And so what I've concluded from many, many years ago is you're manifesting exactly what you want to manifest. It's because if you didn't want to manifest it, you wouldn't be manifesting. Ain't that something? And so, you see, we're like gods with a small g. You know, we're creating every day, not creating in terms of bringing something into existence, but we're creating our reality every day. Because every day, I was telling my daughter earlier today, I said, do you realize that you can't even get out of bed without making yourself an offer and accepting the offer? So it's things we're taking for granted. But before you get out of bed, you have to say to yourself, I'm going to get up. And you may say it verbally, you may say it mentally, or it may just be an energy vibration that you shoot through the vibration of thought, and then it connects to offer acceptance and you get up out of bed. But the reality is that there's nothing happening in our universe without a directive, because that's how the spirit world works. And so when we think about, when we break everything down from the law of abundance and the law of manifestation, it helps us to truly understand that every day we're creating our reality. And so if I don't like my reality, then I have to look internally and say, what is it that I'm doing to create this? And what do I need to do differently to change the outcome? It's because the resource lives in us. And so I look at every level of my journey. I look at the things I've gone through and where I've been and the stages I've been through and where I am now and where I've been. And every last phase of it, I can see the relationship between the manifesting of what I put there in the condition or the circumstances I found myself because of me being accountable or not being accountable to law. And the more I'm clear on that, it helped me to understand how we're creating our reality every day. It's like I would hear the story of somebody who was making $500,000 a year, and it was a gentleman making $50,000 a year, but yet they were equal. they were basically the same in intelligence and in stature and potential. And the guy who was making 500,000 a year was saying to himself, how can I live on 50,000 a year? And then when he hit 100,000, he would say, how can I live on 100,000 a year? This is not enough. So he continued to thrive until he satisfied his idea of living on 500,000 a year. Where the person at 50,000 a year said, I can survive on this. This is enough. I've reached my high point. I'm great. I'm there. And so I think that's like how all of us operate in our energies. We operate based on creating a ceiling or not creating a ceiling, and we leave the unlimitation or the limitation we create because of the power that is in our ability to manifest and create. Any other comments or questions? Anybody have any?
I apologize.
Go
Can I
ahead.
be heard again?
Yes, sir.
I apologize. You about 5 miles out of town right now from what I wanted to speak to. But just like what you're saying, you have a map that is your governing faculty or that you're striving to manifest.
Yes.
Because of, just like what you're saying, the unconscious things that take place, this is the reason why you're getting what you want every day, even though the things that you're experiencing is an unconscious creation.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. How do you stay conscious and focused so that the unconscious doesn't impede your desired end result?
I love it. And that's a profound question there, Eddie. Now, what I think you're speaking to is how we are allowing the subconscious, the billionaire brain computer, to be conditioned and programmed. And what I would always say, I know in trainings I did for many years, I would say, we are allowing forces, unidentified forces, to enter. It's like your subconscious mind can be filled with your childhood beating up on you, say by a parent, a parent who was just living in judgment of him or herself and just beat you down as a child. And therefore you store that in your subconscious mind. And then that subconscious mind plays back. And so therefore, when you are in the present, in the now with your consciousness, and you're trying to move forward, and then the playback of the childhood judgment comes back, that does create conflict. And so for me, I've talked about over the years, there are 5 aspects to the memory. And so the memory is very powerful because you have soul memory, you have desired memory, you have undesired memory, you have character memory. And so all the different aspects of us are vibrational. And so one of the most important things is has to be an identity of the contract. So for example, if I said to myself at 8, 9, 10 years old, people who are rich are evil, and I created that in my mind, then what I've also done is probably created blockage for me to ever become rich, is because in my mind now, every time I see people gaining financially, I have a contract in my brain computer that says people who are wealthier are evil. And so it is subconsciously, but it's subtle, but it basically could create a huge blockage for me to move forward towards financially free, is because of that contract I've created with myself. And I think we've done that on many levels on ourselves over years, and not really realizing the emotional or the psychological damage that we have the ability to do to ourselves when we are interacting with spirit. Because we are clear in carnality, because of the carnality is more physical, it's right in your face. But the spirit world is something that you have to be intuitive. It's something you have to, it's like inventorying your thoughts and your feelings. I always say to everybody as students, your thoughts and your feelings are your greatest inventory. But we think our greatest inventory is how much money I got in the bank, my car, my house, but how can those things be your greatest inventory when your thoughts and feelings are going to go into everything that you ever do, any decision that you ever make? And so we value the carnal, and we've been conditioned and trained to devalue the spirit, the internal resources in us. And that is the real wealth. And so when people become materially wealthy, the way they get there is because they have acknowledged, accessed, and applied their internal resources. And they continue to do it through a vibrational drive, again, which is an energy source. And that comes from, when you study the brain, we talk about the cerebral cortex and the amygdala. And when you take those aspects of the brain, the cerebral cortex has to deal with your higher consciousness, your higher thought patterns. And then the amygdala has to do with how you package the emotion. And so, of course, when we're not conscious of that, what's usually playing in our subconscious mind is fear, being afraid of the relationship, being afraid of growth, being afraid of interacting with people, being afraid of being challenged, being afraid of rejection. And so all those things begin to record in our brain computer, and then we're interacting with those on a day-to-day basis, successfully, mind you, successfully. Because that once you have placed the contract's working. That's very key. Does that give any insight to your question, Eddie?
Yes, clarity.
Yeah.
Now the issue is putting that in the file cabinet. No, putting that on the screen and keeping it on the screen is the challenge now.
Yeah. And see, again, because we all have different energy vibrations, and of course, by your name being Eddie, you have the 5 energy, which means is your energy is more designed to travel, where somebody else may have more of a focus energy, so they could focus more effectively in using it that way. Yours would come through a series of interactions, because when the more I've talked to people who have 5 energy, they have a whole different frequency of comprehending things. And so as you have a strength in your 5 energy, that becomes a weakness in mine, because I don't have the same intuitiveness that you have in your 5. My 7 energy is more focused, so I can focus on something and pull something from it where that may not be a strength of yours. And so we're all here to make known the unknown. We're all here to learn our strengths and weaknesses so that we can align those strengths and weaknesses in leverage with working with people so that we become more effective. That's probably the best way to say it. Welcome, Naisha and Monty, to the platform. And so we're talking this evening about the law on manifestation and the law on abundance. And we've been talking about how we all are operating these laws every day, consciously and unconsciously. We're operating out of the law of abundance and the law on manifestation. And so the more that we're conscious of the law, the more that we know how to acknowledge the law, access the law, and apply the laws in our life, it puts us in a situation that we end all our excuses for failure. We know that the resource is here. It's here to stay, and it's here to use this lifetime and next lifetime. And so it just matters that we understand that we're all very successful in our lives. So the question that comes up is, what are you manifesting? Because when you're manifesting your energy, you're packaging it. And when you take the thought and you make it an idea and you package it with the human emotion and you use that, it's going to be successful every time, 100% of the time, folks. So that's why when we look at life, it brings us incredible challenge in terms of understanding this thing that we call life, because it's really about us understanding the resources that live in us, how to acknowledge those resources, access those resources, and apply those resources towards our goals and our desires. So do we have any comments, any questions, any responses to the law on manifestation and the law on abundance? Don't everybody be shy. Don't everybody speak at once.
Greetings. Can you hear me?
Greetings. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'm Brother Dennis Asar Winkler. And I pardon me for getting on a little behind, well, quite a bit behind, just getting out of the office.
Yes.
But I must say, you know, just the smidgen that I've heard thus far has been powerful.
Yes. Sir.
And I think, you know, when you speak about the amygdala, the cerebellum, or the cerebral cortex, you know, and then you speak to it on a spiritual level and you connect the both, that's very powerful, because I think it can connect with different people. Some people are more, you know, left brain or right brain or have you. No one's locked in one or the other. We can, though, be to some degree. Yeah. But I think it just makes sense. It can make left brain sense as much as it can make right brain sense. And I just think it's powerful and it's doable, you know. So I just want to thank you for, and I'm sorry that I missed it. I'm certain I'll go back and look at the recording, because that bit of information, the way you articulated, was very powerful. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, sir. My pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, it is very interesting when we look at the knowledge of self, the self-knowledge. That has been my journey to really look at the energy resource that lives in us, how to acknowledge it, access it, and apply it to understanding self-knowledge. And the more that we uncover the resources that are very practical and simple, as all of us are successful every day. And so that's one of the lines that I basically share with people almost on a daily basis, because so many of us do not realize how successful we are. And so when you start in the spirit world and you realize that you have the absolute power of directing your energy, your whole universe, you have the absolute power of directing your consciousness, directing your ability to acknowledge, directing your thought process, and directing the information resource on where it goes and what shuts off and what is added on. When we think about the power of directing the contracts that we create, the ones we offer ourselves, and what we accept and what we do not accept, that is your universe 24 hours, 7 days a week. And so earlier I was doing a speaking engagement this morning, and we were talking about pretty much similar things. And what I was talking about is the ecosystem, the economy, and the eco, that everybody has a economy within them. And so therefore your relationship to money, your relationship to wealth, your relationship to finance, and the 5 cells, purposeful, emotional, passionate, spiritual, and intellectual. And these 5 cells come together to create. And so one of those usually are leading, one of those are usually lagging. And so it's always a university or a universal force that we're bringing together to manifest, to create. And so the more that we look at our internal being, the spiritual aspect of our internal being, the more that I understand myself, I have to absolutely conclude that I am you and you are me. Ain't that something? Like looking into the mirror. It's consciousness. It's a source of energy that we all have been given permission. All have been given the power at a time, meaning energy, time of what are you going to do with this energy while you're in this physical body? Because when I leave this physical body, I'm going on to a different plane. And so my time in this physical body, and this plane may have ended in this sphere, but I'm moving on to a different energy or a different vibration. But the time I have to operate now in this physicality is finite. But in my spiritual being, I don't feel that there's a limit. I don't feel that I'm confined to this realm. And so I believe a part of me has gotten that way is because of meditating, traveling spiritually. And so I always challenge people, especially if they have a spiritual vibration of energy, I would challenge them to do some astral travel or do some meditation and go into your higher being so that we can really release ourselves from some of the forces of this carnality. Because this carnality, folks, is mean. Any comments and questions, and I'll concluding. Anybody have any last words or any questions or comments? Or is everybody just pumped, motivated, excited, and ready to do something awesome and unbelievable?
Well, hi, Paul. It's Rhonda.
Hey, Rhonda.
Hey, I just obviously, every time you speak, I hear something, I learn something slightly different. I take something different away. I love the aspect of talking about the fact that we are always successful 100% of the time, every day, all day. What that taught me and what I've been learning to do recently is to look at the process of my contracts that I have established and start changing them. If I've created them, then I can change them. That's a beautiful thing.
Ain't that
right?
something?
So these are my contracts. I created them, but yet I'm being held hostage by my contracts. That makes no sense to me, right?
Exactly.
And so lately I have been deciding that I have made contracts that are not serving me. And it is time now for me to release those contracts in a whole host of different ways, whether that is my wellness, my overall well-being and my focus, whether that is my work, my business that I'm building, whether that is just how I choose to spend my time or who I allow to spend my time, all of that. So I love the aspects of talking about contracts and the power that it gives us to really take control of our lives and to lean in more into our ability to manifest in our personal abundance. The other thing I wanted to say real quick, because I think about this every time you say it, and I don't think I've ever really said it to you this way, but when you talk about the energy and we think about the fact that we are energy being housed in these bodies, I think that's so powerful because there's so many people out there that don't know what's next. They don't know, is there a heaven? Is there a hell? I don't know anything about that. But what science has proven is that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So we know there's something. If we are energy and that has been proven, then we at least know that, right? If we know nothing else. So, so I just wanted to share that because I don't think I've ever shared it with you that way. But anyway, my friend, my partner, great job tonight.
Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful. And see, the whole power of that, when you think about that, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So once you have mathematically concluded that you are an energy source and this physical body is secondary to your energy source, you gain tremendous power over the program. Because the program of the world is constantly trying to make us think we're just finite. You're just this person. This is you're just this. And so therefore, you're going to die one day. And it's like, that makes no sense spiritually because energy doesn't die. It just germinates. It just vibrates. It just rises. And so it's all based on concepts. And so the people who control the idea are controlling people. And if they're not righteous, then that means they're operating against the natural law. One of the most important things is to understand that this world that we live in is abstract. It's a physical place, which is called planet Earth. But the world that we are brought into, that we are birthed into in terms of the mental conceptions, is not real until we contract with it. once we contract with it, we accept it. And that is the masterful plan that you accept things maybe without research or without factual basis or understanding. And it's not that it's done intentionally. It is because oftentimes it is our parents who are like gods to us, who gave us the information or who gave us the perception of this is what it is. And so the journey is really about discovery. The journey on this planet is really about making known the unknown. And so I just feel very, very blessed spiritually, is because at a very, very young age, I was challenged with things that were beyond the physical world that really heightened my awareness to start looking at things going, something is off here, because this ain't jiving with this. And as I begin to really look into things, it made me more and more curious about the unseen world, which took me on a journey that has just really given me what I would consider great insight spiritually to understanding the law on manifestation and abundance. How you doing this evening, Marcus?
Peace, Brother Paulo. I'm doing well. Greetings, everybody. Delightful to see you and to hear you for the short period of time that I've been able to do so. So all the best to you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and so if there's anybody else with any comments, any questions, anything that you have on your heart, anything you just really want to open up and talk about on manifestation and abundance or your journey, anything, feel free. Got a few minutes left. Don't be shy.
Hello, Brother Paul. How are you?
Great, Monty. How are you this evening?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for welcoming me to the call.
Yes, sir.
It's definitely a pleasure to always learn something new from you about the spiritual side, about contracting, about how we go through life, how we connect to people. So I wanted to ask you, in the design of things, if you're building on something, height of your life, how do you get past some of those connections where you can't connect with family, so that they can at least hear you or hear your vibration or hear the fact that you're sincere with them about changing the trajectory of your family's life? How do you manage that, like with no stress?
Oh, that's a great question, because, you know, there's a saying biblically that a prophet is never honored in his own home. And so me hearing that at a very young age, studying religion, what that said to me is that most of us live in judgment of ourselves and each other. So our family are the ones who judge us the most from childhood. So most of our parents, siblings, grandparents, aunts and uncles think they know you. And so for me, how I would approach that is I would plant a seed, and then I would move forward and bring the fruits of the labor as testimony for them and to them, so they could begin to come out of judgment and be more objective to the possibility. It's like my family, just like you're speaking to, I think my brothers and sisters barely know me, which is amazing to me. It's like they have no idea who I am, because it's like my conversation with them is very limited based on how they interact with me. And so it's like I will open up to a person as much as they will open up to me. But if I see a person not willing to listen, and you know, my thing is I'm speaking words of wisdom, so I'm not going to waste my words of wisdom if you're not interested in the dialogue. And so I think when we are dealing with the spirit of judgment, which is very common in, again, the carnal world, in this world system, it is probably wiser not to frustrate yourself to trying to get them involved in something or to get them as a party to it, but more so plant seeds and continue on with your desire, your goal, and then bring them back to fruits and kind of use that as more so leverage.
Ooh, Paul, can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
So now you're in a little bit of my lane, Monty, which is emotional intelligence. And so, one of the pieces I would add to that is, there's a saying that I have been using for myself as I reflect on my actions, and that is stay in your lane, right? Your lane, my lane is to shine my light, be the example, as Paul said, drop the seeds. And my job is not to convince other people of my vision. Because everybody has their own path, their own vision. I can't see what they see. They can't necessarily see what I see. All I can do is be the person I'm meant to be. And through that, I will influence others sometimes and other times not. And even if they never come around, I will love them where they are for who they are, and then keep it moving and stay in my lane.
Wonderful. And I have a philosophy that goes with that. Everybody's absolutely perfect where they are. Very important to be able to understand that at a mature level spiritually, because since we're all perfect where we are, is because everything that we do contractually, that we are directing ourselves, even in the most challenged person, they are attracting the experiences that he or she needs. And so I remember doing a class many years ago, and the gentleman stood up and he goes, "What do you mean by that? You mean to tell me if my wife's on crack, she's perfect where she is?" I said, "Absolutely." I said, "Who am I or you to go in between you and your wife on crack and become God and say, you don't need that experience?" Now, here's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's necessarily a good or righteous thing. What I am saying is the time that somebody chooses to take crack or take something detrimental or self-destructive, at the time that they did that, some kind of way they convinced themselves this makes sense. And so each and every one of us have been in our lives in situations where we've done that. It may not be to that detriment or to that level, but we have the ability to convince ourselves that we're going to do something that was totally crazy, totally unrighteous, but some kind of way in our brain computer, it makes sense to us right now to do this. And so I believe this is how success works, because in order for us to ever understand a state of heaven, the highest level of bliss on this plane that we call earth or heaven, the only way you can really understand heaven or bliss, you have to have hell as a measuring device. So the things that we go through that become challenging, that become very dissipating in terms of humanity, it serves us as a measuring device when you reach your higher points to know that you're on high. Because if you didn't have those low points, when you got to the high point, you would have no appreciation for it. Ain't that something? Okay, so we're at 8:09, a little over the time. So is there any last questions, comments before we conclude our presentation on the law on manifestation and the law on abundance? Any last questions or comments? And so we've talked about being an energy source here on the planet. Everybody's here to make known the unknown. We're all energy sources. We've come here to create manifestation, and we're here with the power of abundance, the power of divinity, and it's all about us tapping into those resources, because we're successful every day in our lives. Every day in our lives, we're successful, folks. And so the question is, what are you manifesting? Excuse me, what are you manifesting? Because you're successfully manifesting something every day that you are creating through the power of your abundance, through acknowledging you're accessing your resources, your abilities, your gifts, your talents. you are manifesting and creating through your vibrational energy of acknowledging thought, thought leading to packaging the emotion with the idea, and then you carry the idea out into some physical form until you manifest it. And so every time that we contract, every time that we take thought and we tie it into an idea, which means that you make yourself an offer and you're accepting that offer, that's success. That is success. And so it could be sleeping all day. It could be hiding out watching TV or being on the social media. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Once you have contracted to do it, you created the success of it. And so I think it's so important for us to leave here tonight with understanding it's not that you're not successful in your life, because you're creating success every day through the power of abundance and manifest. The question becomes, are you acquiring your goals and dreams? Because the habitual pattern, again, it falls under law, the law on habitual pattern, that we get caught up in habit, very subtly, very unconsciously. And then these habits take us away from the dream or the goal that comes later, but the habit now becomes challenging. And so as Rhonda said earlier, you have to go back to the initial contract that created the habit, the initial contract that created the contract. And you have to renegotiate that contract. You have to upgrade your contract. You have to dissolve the contract. You have to do what it is that's important in order for you to realize that when you set your mind to the contract, you make yourself an offer and you accept that offer, you have created success. Now it just matters how you manifest it. Very, very powerful and very, very key to our lives, because each and every one of us are doing it every day successfully. So I want to thank each and everyone for attending and coming out to share in the platform this evening. I want to thank Brother Kevin for being such a gracious host and putting the panel together, bringing everybody together towards healing and manifesting healing energy towards a greater goal. And so anybody have any last words? We're going to turn it back over to the host, Brother Kevin.
Yes. Anyone has anything they would like to share? Okay. Yes.
I'd like to ask a question. Paul, you're going to send out the same group text, the recording of this call?
Brother Kevin, can you respond to that?
Yeah, that's.
I would know how to answer, so I got to turn that over. Pardon me, I got to turn that.
You got me smiling that time. I finally got a smile. Yes, yes, that would. I would share that with Paul, and Paul will get that to you.
Okay. And that demonstrates what Paul was saying earlier about contracting, right, Paul? Skill set.
Yeah. Yeah.
You seem to have some doubt. He didn't create an environment of doubt, did he? As misgivings. want to thank everybody for coming on board. And I really mean that. And thank you, Paul, for uniting the spiritual sciences with the social sciences. And I realized before anything manifests itself, it must first have order. And I realized, as Marcus Garvey says, he says, the greatest force is success. And people surround themselves with evidence of that success. Thank you for making things very clear in proximity. Because when we came into this plane of existence, that's success. So it's required upon us to build on that success. Yes. I also realized this too. Principles don't react to anything. Principles are bigger than people or circumstances, because circumstances makes us other than ourselves. The first sign of deception is when we reach outside of ourselves rather than reaching inside of ourselves. And one more thing, the personal power that comes from principle-centered living is the power of self-awareness. And how can I prove that? Because when the seed of potential that was sowed in us because Buddha says all that we possess is the result of thought. The seed of potential has been sowed in us. So if we cultivate that potential, we are aware of that. And when we are aware of that, that is success. And when there is success, that's what you call the ascension. Then you rise above.
Ashe.
I just want to say thank you again. And next week, Brother William Murray will come on Wednesday. He will talk about the having the right mindset for success. And other than that, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Until next time, nothing but the best for you all. Thank you.
Peace.
Sure.
Good night, everyone.
Second and third day. Good night. Thanks, Paul.
And everyone, thank you,
Good night,
Paul,
everyone. Good night,
everyone else.
everyone.